Most people think that closure comes from a conversation with their former spouse. But what if waiting for that conversation, which may never happen, is actually the thing that's keeping you stuck? In today's episode, I'm going to walk you through how to create the closure you need in order to finally move forward with your life. When we are in a marriage, especially a long marriage, we learn to regulate our emotions and our nervous system with our spouses. And we become very used to that. So the longer the marriage goes on, it just becomes normal. And it becomes normal to our brain, to our body, to our whole system. And then when we split from that former spouse and we get into this stage of what do we do? How do we heal? What do I do first? It can become so overwhelming. But the underlying event in all of that is learning how to self-regulate our nervous system so that we can move forward. And one of the things that we need to learn about this self-regulation is that it doesn't come from someone else. We need to find it within. And that is really a very hard thing to do if you don't know how to do it. So we're going to talk today about how to actually get started on that self-regulation so that we can stop waiting for that conversation we may have or seeing that other person, that former spouse, so that we can get everything off our chest, so to speak, and fix ourselves so that we can move forward and heal and be happy. The mistake that so many women make is when they get to that point after the divorce, when they're trying to start the healing journey, they are still waiting for that regulation to come from somewhere. And they may not even realize that this is something that they can do themselves. So, how do we learn to accept this? How do we learn to know that the power is within us, that we are empowered to regulate our own systems? We are empowered to move forward from something, no matter how traumatic, no matter how difficult it was. Let's talk about the ways we can do that. First of all, I've always been a big fan of writing things down. And so when I got out of my own marriage, I had my journal, and that was my best friend. And I went through several of them and I wrote down a lot of things. I wrote down my feelings. I wrote down the challenges I felt I was facing. I wrote down the things I was afraid of, right? And doing this really helps you to understand what those challenges are. And this is the first step toward acceptance. So I want you to realize again that this is an exercise. This is a step in the direction toward healing. And it may seem like something that is not necessary, but I guarantee you that what you do by writing things down in your journal is actually taking things off your shoulders and putting them on the paper, which is a release. Okay. So I want you to write down things you learned in the marriage about yourself. Maybe when you were upset, the first thing you did was go to your spouse and ask them to, what should I do? What should I do? How should I make this better? Or maybe like me, you just had a spouse who volunteered information on how you should fix things all the time. So regardless of what it is, I want you to write those things down, what you learned about yourself when it comes to healing from something or feeling better from something. And it can involve even something you said to someone that you feel you shouldn't have said, something you forgot to do that really put you in a bind and made you feel like people were, pointing the finger at you and not happy. And that's going to teach you a lot about how you regulated. Okay. And then we're going to focus, after you do this exercise, I want you to start focusing on turning the job of self-regulating onto yourself and taking it off of the former spouse. Now, you may say, how can I do that? Because now that I realize that I was regulated by the former spouse, how do I take on that responsibility? How do I take on that ability to do that? And so I want you to think of it as a positive thing. This is something wonderful because once you learn how to self-regulate your emotions, you're going to find that you become a lot more emotionally stable, that you start feeling more safe. And these things all will come when we do these exercises. So the first step in starting to regulate our emotions on our own without relying on that former spouse and sitting and hoping for some kind of a time when we can say everything that we want to say because we think that'll make us feel better is to actually do that process, but not with the former spouse. So we're going to write a letter to the former spouse, right? And the letter is going to be about all the things that we would say to that person if they were sitting in front of us right now. Maybe the feelings we felt that were never validated. Maybe the feelings we feel now. Maybe the anger we feel now. Maybe the things that were said by the former spouse when we got into a situation where we needed regulating that didn't resonate. For example, with me, like I mentioned, my former spouse, when I had a bad day or something happened that really brought me down, and I would say, oh, something brought me down, his first reaction was to tell me how I should have done it differently, or to tell me what I should have done or what I should do now. And those weren't the things I wanted to hear. I didn't ask for his opinion on what I did wrong or how I did it wrong or how I could fix it. I just wanted the sympathy. I wanted the hug. I wanted the, I'm on your side. Do you want to talk more about it? That's what I wanted. So, in your letter, if you're realizing this now, again, at that time, until very close to the end, I didn't realize how that reaction was affecting me and what I needed. Because I think, as I've mentioned in other episodes, I really kind of swept what I was feeling under the rug because I was so unhappy. So, your letter has no boundaries. I want you to write it to your former spouse as if you were talking to him or to her right there in the room, and write down whatever resonates, whatever feels good, whatever you want to get off your chest, and just let it all out. And then once you're done with the letter, we're going to have a ceremony. We're actually not going to send the letter to the former spouse. This letter is for you. This letter is for you to learn how to take that and toss it. We're going to toss all of that we're putting on the former spouse to make us feel better, to help us so we can move forward, because that's not true. Those things aren't true. We have to do that on our own. So we're going to write this letter, and then we're going to set a beautiful ceremony. And I want you to sit somewhere where you're going to be undisturbed for, I don't know, as long as it takes you 15, 20 minutes, half an hour. And I want you to bring this letter with you. And I want you to have maybe some candles and some really beautiful music playing in the background. And I want you to have either a trash bin or something to light a flame to this page. Of course, you have to be very careful. You might want to have a bucket of water or something, or however, or you just might be tearing it up. But whatever, we'll talk about that in a moment, whatever makes you feel good. And then what I want you to do is I want you to sit comfortably. You can put a bunch of pillows. I want you to make it a really beautiful sitting space for yourself that is very relaxing. And like I said, one where you won't be bothered. And I want you to take that letter and I want you to read it out loud with all of the emotion that you feel that went into putting these words onto the paper. If it's anger, if it's hurt, if it's tears, let it come out. You're reading this letter, and that person is sitting right in front of you. Now, if you need context, you can take a picture of that person and you can put it in front of you if that helps. But really, you can just picture in your head that person sitting there. And I want you to read the letter all the way through. And when you're done, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to put your hands on your heart and I want you to take a few deep breaths. I want you to realize that you're going to release all of that responsibility that you're putting on somebody else to fix you, to heal you, to take out the barriers that will allow you to move forward. And after you take a few deep breaths, I want you to open your eyes and take that letter. And this is where you can choose, and you can actually choose before you sit down for this whole process, how you're going to let this go, how you're going to release it. But it is a physical exercise. So either you're going to tear that letter up into a bunch of little pieces, maybe drop them into a trash can or drop them into some water, or you're going to, like I said, only if this is safe, you can light that letter on fire and hold it over a big bucket of water and drop it in there. Or you can sit in front of your fireplace and you can put it in there and light it on fire, whatever makes sense. Or you can simply crumble up that letter into a bunch of pieces again and throw it away, throw it out the window, throw it in a trash can, whatever makes you feel good. That act of physically taking that letter that contains all of your emotions, that contains putting the responsibility on someone else for your healing, is going to feel amazing when you get rid of it. And that's why we sit down and we kind of make this little ceremony and we get rid of that letter. And then I want you to once again close your eyes after you tear it up or crumble it up or burn it or whatever you decided to do. And I want you to take a few more deep breaths and say to yourself, I now release, and say the name of the former spouse. I now release Bob or Joe or whatever his name is from responsibility for my healing, from responsibility for regulating my nervous system and my emotions. And I take full control of those things. And then you can just do whatever you need to do. If you need to sit there for a while, if you need to lay down and just really focus on the love in your own heart and really focus on the positive, which is the love in your own heart. The love in your heart is what enabled you, what allowed you to take this responsibility off of that other person and put it here where it belongs in your heart. And that's it. So I want you to try this technique, this ceremony, this precious transferring of the responsibility and see how it feels because it is really empowering. And let me know. The next thing that we want to do is actually a little bit less of an emotional thing, and it can feel really hard. And that is, I want you to cut off all contact with that former spouse. Now, the caveat, the exception here is if you are in a joint custody situation with children, or if you need to speak to that spouse, a former spouse, in regards to the children. And we're going to have to separate that from being in contact with them. Those kinds of contact are still allowed. And so when we need to respond or reach out to that former spouse about those kinds of things, then we will. And in that situation, we can't really block them from our phone, but we can come up with some kind of a code word with them for something that's really important, like 911, okay, or important. And we can ask that person, and we both would honor this going both ways, that when there's something really important, we first text the word important or 911 or whatever the code word is, child, so that we know that it's about that. And then we can discuss with them via text or phone call or whatever, however you arrange it. And this is something you're going to have to arrange with them. But if you don't have that need to stay in touch with them for anything other than the children, I want you to delete them from all your social media. Do not look at their social media. What it does is it actually pulls you back. It sets you back. And you don't want to see them out water skiing with their friends or drinking with a buddy or maybe even talking to a pretty lady, right? You don't care. Your focus now is on you and healing you. And so if you're watching them and they look like they're having this great time, what's that going to do to you? It's going to bring you back down. So we just did all this work to release them from being responsible for your emotions and your nervous system regulation. So cut off all contact. Again, if there is contact because of the children, that is something you need to establish with them as to how you're going to take care of that. But if you don't have that, if you're later in life and your children are older, then just temporarily block them from your phone. And it doesn't have to be forever. And if there is something that's needed for a child, an older child, say, then you can unblock them. So I want you to try that. And the last thing is actually fun and it allows you to be creative. And this is to really form some new habits because our brain gets in this loop, it gets in this process. And when we are talking about things or thinking about things that aren't positive, that don't relate to our regulation and how we are responsible for that. For example, if we think about, oh my gosh, I saw a picture of my former spouse, out with his friends having fun. This is why we delete them. Then we're telling our brain that we're thinking about that, and our brain is going to find ways for us to think about that former spouse more or introduce situations that might make us upset, right? Our brain gives us what it thinks we want. So if we're constantly thinking about the former spouse, we're going to keep thinking about the former spouse, and things will come up to remind us of him or her. So we want to find new habits to get into. They say it takes 30 days to get into something new, to form a new habit. So I want you to make some new friends if that's necessary, or contact those who truly support you and go out and do fun things. I want you to find something new to do at least once a week, which involves yourself getting up and leaving the house and doing something fun. And I've talked about this many times. It can be taking a new class, learning a language, learning how to do something you always thought was fun, paint, dance, cook, to sports, joining a team, joining an intramural basketball, tennis, some kind of a league, pickleball. Go out and learn it, take a lesson, do something fun for you, which involves other people. And by creating these little habits, you are going to take your attention off of thinking about that former spouse. And little by little, you'll start to realize that, hey, I'm actually feeling better. I'm regulating my own emotion. It's not dependent anymore on what that former spouse does and or doesn't do. And so those are the three ways that we want to focus on so that we can take back our own responsibility for healing. And once we get in this groove of recognizing things that we are doing for ourselves to make things better and realizing that we're no longer waiting to regulate based on the former spouse, we'll know that there's no reason to wait for a conversation any longer. That may never happen because we don't even need that conversation to happen. We've got it covered. If something on this episode resonated with you and made you think about something or gave you a great idea onto how to move forward on your own, then please subscribe. I talk about these things every week to help you to do just that, to learn how to heal so that you can become the best and highest version of you. And again, if you found something here that really made you feel better, a little bit, even a little bit better, please like, please comment, and please share this with whoever you think might need it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.